Nothing externally can ever bring you peace and happiness. The only thing that can bring you freedom and peace and happiness is inside of you. You've always had it and you always will have it. You just have to tap into that.
"83% of Americans identify as not very happy, which can hold you back and negatively affect your relationships and your business. On this podcast, we discuss the proven steps to happiness so you can restore balance and rekindle your joy.
Welcome to another episode, I should say, of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. We're going to do things a little different today. Hopefully you guys are going to like this. I've only done it once in the last 80 times. So we're going to flip the tables and I'm going to be interviewed. Michael's going to interview me. So Michael, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Brad. It's a pleasure to be on here today. I'm excited to interview you.
Awesome, man. So yeah, you came up, but tell everyone how we met and then you can just fire away. You had some amazing questions.
Yeah.
So you take over, brother.
That sounds good. Yeah. Well, so I've always been a believer that, you are where you're supposed to be. And I met Brad. I was supposed to have an interview at 12 p.m. on a Wednesday. That interview got canceled, and I happened to run into Brad at the gym. I overheard him having a conversation on addiction and trauma and how it can really affect our relationships. So I struck up a conversation with Brad and got quite a few questions for him. So that's how this happened. And, I'm going to ask you some questions today. So I'm excited that we get to do this here.
I love it, man. Let's rock and roll.
Sure. So starting off I got my first question here, and that is through the use of substance, specifically porn, alcohol, drugs, even overconsumption of the media. Why do you think people are so stimulated by these things? And do you think that through the use of these things, people are running from something?
Oh man. Again, just love it. Love it. There's so much to unpack here. So yes, they're being stimulated, but more they're running from something. So every single negative behavior that you have in your life that you don't like and that you want to get rid of is your brain's solution to a problem that it perceives as even worse. So let's give an example. Let's put this into perspective. And this goes for anything. I'm just going to use social anxiety. I'm actually use anxiety for public speaking. Got to get up on stage. You go to walk into that room to go up on stage and you have this somatic feeling in your body. You get tense, you start sweating, you have this weight on your chest and you don't like it. And you're like, I hate this. I wish I could just get up on stage and just spread the message, right? Well, what is that doing? It's your body saying that thing on stage is scarier than the anxiety that you are entertaining and that you're dealing with right now. Because if you go on stage and you mess up, you may get disparaged and mocked and made fun of, just like, and then you can fill in the blank, just like when those bullies at school, or just like my father did. And what I've really learned these last couple months, I'm a constant educator. I just keep studying and just try to get better and better at my craft, is that this is going to sound deep and people aren't going to quite understand this. But when you have issues as a child and you piss off your parents, you say something that they can't handle. Our brain that's been around for 6 million years and its only thing is to keep us alive, our mind and our subconscious mind. If we piss off our parents, they're the quote, the people who give us the food and water, right? What happens if you don't have your parents around? What's the ultimate thing that happens?
Well, we wouldn't have guidance. We wouldn't have food on the table, clothes on our backs.
And then if you don't have food, what happens to you after a while?
You die.
You die.
Yeah.
You die. So that stage fright, that I don't want to get up on stage, it's not that you're thinking, oh my God, if I get up on stage and I die. But your 6 million-year-old brain is thinking, if I get up on stage, that's going to remind me of when my dad made fun of me. And when I was 6 years old and my dad made fun of me, I thought he didn't love me. And if he didn't love me, how could I survive? So everything, you gave like great examples of drugs and porn, but you can put anything in that. It's the negative behavior that you're trying to run from something, just like you said, that we think is worse. So The beauty though, Michael, is that when we really do the work and we figure out what this thing is that we're running from that we think is worse than the negative behavior that we can't stop, it's always an untruth. Always, always, always an untruth. In my case, it was I'm not enough. Well, I realized, oh my gosh, I am enough. And that's when my life changed and I got my freedom 3.5 years ago.
So you think the first step is obviously realizing that you have a certain behavior or something you're running from and then confronting it?
Yeah. So I think the first step to all change is awareness, right? So I developed this literally, it'll only take you 2 minutes and 45 seconds, this self-love quiz. It's only 12 questions. If you take that and you score, there's 3 scores: extreme self-love, which only about 7% of the respondents have scored. And then there's mild self-love and lack of self-love. If you score mild self-love or lack of self-love, there's a really, really good chance that you have these underlying hidden beliefs that are untruths that are driving your negative behavior. So let's go to weight loss. This is a subject that I just absolutely am fascinated with, because my old self was like, oh, someone's overweight, they're just lazy and they have bad food habits. No, that's not the case at all. The case is that's their negative behavior running from something they think is worse. So they can go out and get the best trainers in the world, and they can get the best dietitian, nutritionist, doctors, whatever. But if they don't figure out what caused them to put the weight on in the first place, they can lose the weight, because I've seen countless people do it in my family, in my network, everywhere, right? We all know people lost a bunch of weight and then put it right back on. It's not their fault. It's, again, their mind protecting them. What your mind is supposed to do is your subconscious mind is supposed to keep you alive, and it's supposed to move you from pain to pleasure. Well, that's what it's doing when you eat. They feel painful, and so they get pleasure through food. So it's very simple. If they can just unearth what their untruth is, what their negative belief is, they're going to shed all the weight they want, and it's going to stay off for as long as they want.
All right. Well, here, I got another question for you. And this is one of my favorite quotes that I'm about to share with you by an author. Tamara Coolish wrote that when we don't heal from those who hurt us, we bleed on those who didn't cut us. I wanted to ask you, how important do you think a period of introspection in somebody's life is important, or how important that is to analyze their own behavioral patterns, thought processes for their own sake, for the ones around them?
Yeah, man, another great question. I love that quote too. And I know when I read the earlier version, and maybe this is your next question, you were also going to ask about forgiveness. So how important is introspection? I mean, it's everything, right? After 47 years, I went to get my son help for anxiety, and I wasn't looking to do introspection. I thought I was introspective. I thought I loved myself. I thought I had a lot of self-worth. I didn't. And so I wasn't forced, because I willingly did it, but I wasn't looking to be introspective. But when I became introspective and I did the work, that's when everything in my life has changed. My net worth has gone up. My health has improved. My business has improved. My relationships have improved. Like, everything has gotten better. So the short answer is it's everything, because I've yet to meet a person, and there probably a few in the world, that literally had all of their needs met as children. We create these meanings around events. Sometimes most events are all events are just events, right? But a mentor that I'm studying under now, John Conley, he says all these people they say they want to lead a meaningful life. I want to lead a meaningless life. And what he means by that is when things happen to you, you just don't attach a meaning to it. That's why the person's a drug addict. That's why the person is 75 pounds overweight. That's why the person's cheating on their wife, because things happen to them and they attached a meaning to it. Now, was that bad? No. Your brain was doing the right thing, because if you're neglected at home, if your parents are yelling, if you're getting made fun of like I was, or getting hit with a belt, you've got to come up with a reason, Michael. Why is this happening? Because your brain has to figure out, how am I going to survive? So what we do as kids is we often internalize it and say it's our fault, because if it's our parents' fault, we're screwed, right? But if it's our fault, all we have to do is be better, and then daddy will stop hitting me and making fun of me. So introspection is everything. Forgiveness is a huge part of happiness, but you can't just go forgive the person who did the bad things to you and expect that you're going to stop drinking or break out of your shell. Or it's kind of like in combination. You've got to heal yourself, and at the same time, part of healing yourself is forgiving that person. It doesn't mean that what they did was right. It just means that if you carry that baggage, the only person you're hurting is yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That was my next question. Actually, our baggage tends to make the ones around us suffer. Why should my future partner, my future son, daughter, friends have to deal with my unresolved trauma? And so I'll go straight into the next question.
Well, Michael, can I address that?
Yeah.
So they shouldn't have to, but here's what happens with us human beings. If you score lack of self-love on the quiz, hopefully you're going to go, I'll take it soon here, unlocklimitlessyou.com. It's all over. Just take the quiz. If you score lack of self-love, do you think that there's a good chance that you're going to go meet a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whoever it is that has extreme self-love? No, because the person with extreme self-love is going to spend 5 minutes with you and be like, this person, I can't be with them. Not because they're better than them, but that they're just on a completely different wavelength and vibrational energy, right? So I did this in 2 marriages. We often go find people who think that they're not enough either. Now you've got 2 people who are fighting for their worthiness. How do you think that works out?
It definitely doesn't.
It usually works out in complete fighting, or it works out that one of the people become codependent and they're just like, this is all I'm worth. I'm not going to get any better. This is all I deserve. And then they just stick it out for years and years and years. So no, the people don't deserve to have your unresolved childhood trauma come up, but it's just a fact of life. That's what's going to happen if you're your age and you're thinking about getting married and having kids and a family. The best piece of advice I could give you is don't do it until you find extreme self-love, because it's going to be a really, really hard battle. Now, could you find 2 people who lack self-love that were both committed to driving towards self-love? Yeah, that would work. But you've got to find the person that's committed to doing the work and going on the journey with you.
Right. Wow. It's powerful.
Because, oh, by the way, here's what happens. We marry someone with lack of self-love. We have these kids. What do you think our kids have? If you've got 3 kids that are born to 2 people who lack self-love, is there any chance in the world they're going to have extreme self-love? No, because you're going to push your shit down on them. Not that you mean to. I did it. And I was a really great father, I thought, because I took care of my kids. I never hit them. I was always there for them. I never made fun of them. I did everything for them. But my inadequacy, my subconscious pushed that down on them and created pressure for them that I didn't know I was creating.
And so, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of made you realize that? Was there one specific action or moment where you kind of saw that?
Yeah, I went to try to get my son help for anxiety. I tried everything. I tried therapy. I tried psychiatrists. We tried drugs. Nothing was working. And my buddy's like, you've got to talk to these friends of mine. And I got on this call with this performance coach, and she's like, yeah, you have a tic. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you blink profusely when you talk about your childhood. You may have some unresolved childhood trauma that's affecting your son's anxiety. And I'm like, me? No way. She's like, you can come out and work with my husband and I if you'd like for a weekend. I'm like, okay, I don't think it's me, but I'll try. And sure enough, it was partly me. Of course, it was his mother too. But I had a role in that because I met her because of the way I feel about myself. And so then we had 2 parents that didn't love themselves pushing this shit down on our kids. So in a 3-hour session in this Airbnb bedroom outside of Park City, Utah in February of 2021, my life forever changed. And I came back and I was like, oh my gosh, everyone is struggling for the same reason that I was. These untrue thoughts that are driving their negative behavior. And so I just started telling people about my story, and people were like, Brad, you're really good at this. And then I was like, I started studying, and I've made this my life's journey now, helping people overcome these limiting beliefs so that they can live the life they deserve.
Do you have any specific advice or tricks that would help suppress those thoughts, the negative thoughts that we have on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, well, we don't want to suppress them. So negative thinking is very harmful to your body because your mind doesn't know the difference between you talking negatively and a complete stranger. So you release cortisol. Cortisol is an inflammatory, and most illnesses are based in inflammation. So stop talking negatively to yourself. There's a reason that you're talking negatively to yourself, because you don't like yourself. And when you were born, you loved yourself. Something happened between birth and now that caused you to negative self-talk yourself. If you had a parent or teacher that said you're no good, if your little sister came home from the hospital and you thought that your parents loved her more than you, there's a ton of things that can create the negative self-talk. So what we do in my practice is we go back and we figure out, where are the times in your life where these meaningful events happen, where you place these meanings and created these limiting beliefs that are creating the self-talk or the drinking, the addiction, the depression, the anxiety. And we show the brain that these are nothing more than untruths. And once you do that, this like little mismatch detector goes off, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's not what I thought. After 47 years, I realized I wasn't enough. It was just how my parents felt, how my dad felt. So what can you do? There's 1,000 things you can do, right? You can find a coach like me. You can do meditation. You can read books, The Way to Love by Anthony DeMello. You can go to therapy. You can go to counseling. But it's all about everything you ever needed to be happy, you already have. Happiness is from within. For 47 years, Michael, I thought that happiness was making millions of dollars and dating pretty women and having a big boat and going on vacations and showing off on social media. None of that shit, nothing externally can ever bring you peace and happiness. The only thing that can bring you freedom and peace and happiness is it's inside of you. You've always had it and you always will have it. You just have to tap into that.
That's powerful. Well, I'll ask another question here for you. And that is, our behavior is shaped by countless factors. Are our thoughts and actions our own, or simply the product of how we were raised, who we hang around, what sorts of information we consume? Do we have control over who we are? If we were kids, abusive father, alcoholic, obviously our life is going to turn out quite different than somebody who is raised maybe in a religious household with discipline.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really deep question and another really good question. I would say that I don't think you do have control of your thoughts until the fact that you become aware of them. And I'm going to use me as an example. In July of 2021, my second wife had walked out of the marriage in April. I was just getting my kind of back on my feet, and I'm like, I'm going to buy a boat. Because maybe, I don't know, I love boats and they'll probably attract women. And I wasn't thinking that consciously. I was just thinking, I want a boat. It'd be fun. 2 months later, I'd never owned a boat in my life, and I would go buy a 42-foot boat. 2 months later, I made plans and got on the boat to go to the Bahamas. I didn't even know, the night before I left, I was having a buddy teach me how to read a chart. I didn't even know how to read a chart. I didn't get up and say, I'm no good. I'm going to buy a boat and then I'm going to go to the Bahamas and show all these pictures all on the way because that way I'll feel happy. It was my subconscious mind that was driving that entire decision. And it wasn't until after I went through this life shift that I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh. And at that time, I didn't make it to the Bahamas. The boat was in the Florida Keys. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is why I did that. I flew down to the Keys. It was in Key Largo, or just south of there. Isla Morada. And I brought the boat back because I was like, I don't need to prove anything. So yes, I think that until you have an awareness that your thoughts are mostly a product of your environment, and it's usually between the ages of 0 and 7 because your brain is in a theta wave brain state. That's a hypnotic state. So everything around you is basically hypnotizing you. So if your father's an alcoholic, or your parents are always fighting, or your dad's never there, or you get hit or sexually abused, you're going to be like, why is this happening to me? Most of the time, it's because I'm not enough. I'm bad. I deserve it. But what's the truth? The truth is you're not bad. You didn't deserve it. This was your parents doing, or your caregivers. There's nothing wrong with you, but people go their whole lives thinking they're no good and not worthy.
Yeah. Do you think that the trauma we face, those kinds of things, this kind of relates to, I relate this to science in a way almost, the first law of thermodynamics, which states that energy can't be created or destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. Do you think, or how would you explain to somebody to use their trauma or anger or whatever it is they're going through to turn that back into something else, take something in negative and give back to the world something positive.
Yeah. I mean, take the, Ram Dass says everything in the world is perfect. And I had a really hard time getting through that when I first heard that, because I think about, well, what about the 6-year-old girl who's molested or raped? And I think his thought on that is that while it's a terrible thing, right? Who could ever argue that? What if that girl goes on to be a counselor that helps 1,000 people and changes 1,000 young lives, or helps, again, 102 people, two 13-year-old girls that were going to be that were going to take their lives. She might look back and say, I'm actually glad that happened to me. I've talked to countless people that said cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. When I look at my traumas, I wouldn't take anything back. My dad hitting me with a belt, my dad making fun of me, always fighting. I wouldn't take that back, because it's allowed me, if I had a perfect childhood, first of all, I wouldn't be talking to you. I'm hopefully going to help you in some way, shape, or form. And your life may impact 100 lives, 1,000 lives, 1,000,000 lives. I have no idea. So I think, speaking about energy, I think we were here before. I think we're going to be here again. We're not going to be in the same bodies. And I believe that we picked our traumas, that I think we go through life several times, or hundreds or thousands of times, to learn. And I think that, our traumas can be used in a way that instead of drinking and drugging and abusing people, once you have the awareness and you're willing to do the work, it can be used it can be a magical gift, really.
It's that ripple effect. Yeah, it's powerful. So when you realized that your unresolved trauma was having an impact on your relationships with your children, was that kind of just, wow? Were you just blown away by that? I know you talked about that a little bit. You just seemed shocked.
Yeah, I didn't understand the impact until after I went through the transformation. So my son was with me, and he came into the room after my 3-hour session, and he was working with the wife, and he came in and said that he was like, she said he wants to share something with you, and he told me that he only thought I would love him if he played golf at a high level. Now, I told him countless times, don't do this for me. If you want to quit, it's fine. But that was my conscious mind speaking, and our conscious mind only directs 5% of our behavior. I think what my unconscious mind was saying, similar to the boat escapade, is that if I can get to the Bahamas, people are going to think I'm worthy. If my son can play on the PGA Tour or be a star college golfer, whatever it is, I might be worthy. So I think I was unknowingly putting this pressure on him. And yeah, when that happened, it was like, wow. And, I reinforced that wasn't the case. And I told him I was sorry. And, I remember my daughter a couple of years ago saying, Dad, why? I have a pretty large bedroom and it's got a couch in there, master bedroom. And she said to me, why didn't you let me sleep in there all the time when I was scared? And I said, because I honestly thought that it would mess you up if you were always sleeping in Daddy's room, right? Now, knowing what I know, I would let her sleep in there if she was scared, because while I knew her room was safe, me sending her to her room was like, someone sending me to a den of lions, right? She couldn't comprehend. To her, it was scary, and that had a negative impact on her. So the advice I would give to would-be parents or parents is give your kids everything they need from an emotional and safety standpoint. Teach them, and not many people know how to teach them, how to process emotions. We have this amazing tool called the Joy Regenerator that you can get on the resources tab at unlocklimitlessyou.com. And it actually teaches you how to process your emotions and how to process them with a significant other. So if you can learn that, and you can teach your kids at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old how to process their emotions, some people go a whole lifetime without doing that. So
I know I certainly didn't do it until maybe 2 years ago. So yeah, that's real. What are your thoughts on psychological disorders? Doctors telling people they're bipolar or mentally ill. Mentally ill is a title that's put on a lot of people that probably doesn't help too much.
Yeah, there's a lady, I've quoted her a couple of times, Judith Miller, I think is her name, Judith Herman. She was a Harvard psychologist, and she wrote a book in 1991, I think, called Trauma and Recovery. And the gist of the book is that she believed that there's really only one psychiatric diagnosis, and that's complex PTSD. So what she's saying there is that every mental issue under the sun, and there's I think the book is called DSM or something. There's like 1,000, there's a ton of different diagnoses. She's like, no, it all comes back to one thing and one thing only. It's the trauma. And that even includes ADHD. Like people with ADHD are like, oh, I was born with a defaulted brain. No, you weren't. If you're a child and you go through really painful things, what is your brain going to do? It's going to disassociate. That's pretty much what ADHD is. It's your frontal lobe can't process information fast enough. It slows down. So, yeah, I think everything. I think most psychiatric diagnoses are a load of crap. I think that it's unfathomable to believe or to know that there are 100 million Americans today on an antidepressant or anti-anxiety drug. I don't know how many people should be on there, but I can certainly tell you it's not that. I mean, maybe it's 10,000, maybe it's 5,000, and they do serve a purpose if someone's in a really, really bad place. But overall, they've done studies. Tony Robbins in his book, latest book, Life Force, talks about how Paxil, which is the most prescribed like drug over the last 50 years for depression, has a 50% success rate. It's the same as the placebo. So wow. Yeah, that's my thought on it. Yeah. The disorder part, Michael, a lot of people will argue, and I'm going to include myself in it, that there's no disorder at all. It's your brain is doing exactly what it should. So if you have a, anxiety disorder, that anxiety again is doing what it should because it's keeping you from something that your brain is thinking is more painful. All you have to do is show your brain that the thing that you're running from really is nothing more than untruth. And then the anxiety goes away. So my last podcast was a gentleman who was suicidal and was diagnosed with psychosis, depression, and anxiety 2 years ago or less than 2 years ago. I go, hey, do you have any of those things now? He's like, no. I was like, where'd they go? He's like, I probably never, I didn't ever have them, but that's what they diagnosed, because how do we make money in this country as doctors and physicians and the drug companies, big pharma? We got to diagnose you, and then we got to label you, and then we give you drugs. Well, if there's not a label, how are we going to give you a drug? The physicians like to talk about idiopathic, which means no known cause, or autoimmune. Well, it's hard to prescribe drugs for something they don't know what it is. But the cause is always, or almost always, exactly what we're talking about today. Unresolved childhood trauma creates illnesses. It's actually a cause of most illnesses.
So would you say to a young person like myself, before getting married or entering a relationship, the best course of action for kind of combating that and stepping away?
Yeah, so I think we provide some amazing tools. So I'd have the young person start with the self-love quiz to see where they stand. Then I'd have you download the Joy Regenerator from the site. And anytime you feel a negative emotion, it's similar to when you're sick, your body has a temperature. That's your body's way of saying something's wrong. Anytime you feel a negative emotion, it's your mind's way of saying, hey, something here you have to work on. When you fight with your girlfriend, I'm making this up, I don't even know if you have a girlfriend, but when you fight with your spouse or your girlfriend, it never has to do with the actual situation at hand. It's just you bringing in a meaning from the past. So anytime those happen, you have an ability to be like, where is this coming from? Now, that's kind of what we help you do, but you don't need a coach or a therapist to do that. You can literally get in a deeply meditative state and start thinking about your childhood and everything that happened to you. And what were the thoughts that you were probably telling yourself? Then when you get in these situations, for me, it was, I'm not enough. So when my daughter pisses me off, or my girlfriend, or I get upset, which is very rare now, I immediately go to because it's always a thought that creates an emotion, that creates a behavior or an action. And that behavior action often reinforces the thought. It's this like crazy loop, right? This vicious loop. So when I feel a negative emotion, I immediately ask myself, where is it coming from? I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm frustrated because I'm feeling like they don't value me. I'm not worthy. And so I ask myself, Is that true? Am I worthy? Well, yes, it is true. So why am I going to sit in this state of being pissed off at my girlfriend because she showed up 10 minutes late? Because I'm thinking she showed up 10 minutes late because she doesn't love me and I'm not enough. That's not true. So why am I going to stay in the state? I'm not. So I just bounce right out of it. So take the quiz, download the Joy Regenerator, read books like The Way to Love by Anthony DeMello. Tara Brach has some amazing books. Follow me on social media, unlocklimitlessyou.com/Brad. I put out a message every day. And just know that this is a lifelong thing. You can make incredible progress in a matter of hours, and then you spend the rest of your life in this really good zone, just getting a little bit better each day.
That's the goal, right? One day at a time.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, all you're going to care about as you're taking your last breath is, what was the impact that I made in this world, and what were my relationships like with the people that really they were important, right? That's all that matters. All this other shit that we chase, money and everything else, fame and power. Look at all these politicians on both sides. They're all hurting. They're all looking for fame. They're all looking for prestige. It's the same. Why? Because they don't feel adequate.
And you think all that inadequacy comes from just our childhood?
99.9% of it, 99.5, like an enormous amount of it does. What was the biggest thing you heard today that you'll take away from here? What was your biggest lesson?
Understanding how the trauma we face as children, being young, can affect our relationships with our significant other. I think that's the last person that you want to hurt because of your unresolved trauma. So I really just think it's beneficial for anybody to go through a period of introspection in their life, to understand what the root cause of your problems are. And that's certainly something I'm in the process of doing now, just striving to be better one day at a time. So yeah, I'd just encourage anyone that's listening to just do some deep thinking, some meditation, because the ones you love don't deserve to hurt because of what you haven't healed from,
100%. And when you look at kids with behavioral problems, I often say to the parents, if you want to figure out where these issues are coming from, just grab your spouse, walk into the bathroom and look in the mirror, because you're the cause of it. Notice I didn't say it's your fault. So it's not only your love, it's not only your significant others, it's the kids that you brought into this world. They didn't ask to be brought in this world. I think the greatest gift that you can give any child is to teach them how to break this multi-generational curse that we're in, where we just keep passing it down. And how do you do that? You teach your children or child how to love themselves unconditionally. How in the world can you ever teach your child how to love themselves unconditionally if you don't love yourself unconditionally? So, Michael, that was amazing. I appreciate it. Fabulous questions again. Thank you so much. Let's keep in touch, and I want to be with you on your journey throughout life. That concludes another episode of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. Remember, I'm on a mission to help 1 million people get rid of these limiting beliefs that are holding them back from the life that you so much deserve. So I need your help. I can't do it alone. So if you like this show, please rate it. Please give me a review. Please share it. Whatever you can do to get the word out, I would greatly appreciate it. And until next time, love heals all.
Hit subscribe if you don't want to miss out on more life-changing content. And if you're struggling, you don't have to. Go to bradchandler.com/contact. There, you can join the Facebook community of like-minded entrepreneurs, and you'll see a button to schedule your freedom and happiness call. See you on the next episode.